Welcome to Cartoon Crossroads Columbus, or CXC 2021. Our 4-day celebration of cartoon art couldn't happen without our partner organizations, to whom we are grateful. CXC is a 501(c) nonprofit organization. Our annual festival, free to the public, relies on corporate and grant support as well as individual donations. We are grateful for their support. Visit the Support CXC link on our website to find out how you can help us create meaningful connections between the people who make comics and those who read them. Cartoon Crossroads Columbus acknowledges that the ancient ancestors of the Eastern Woodlands tribes, now referred to as the Adena and Hopewell cultures, inhabited the land we know as Ohio. Their descendants include the living nations of the Shawnee, Miami, Wyandot, Delaware, and Seneca Cayuga. We honor and respect the diverse indigenous peoples connected to this place where we gather. We hope you enjoy this event. Don't forget to visit our virtual expo at cartooncrossroadscolumbus.org and keep the conversation going on our Discord channel, which you can find at cartooncrossroadscolumbus.org/Discord.
Hello, I'm Caitlin McGurk, Associate Curator and Associate Professor at The Ohio State University Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum. Thank you all for joining us for this event, Spotlight on Bianca Xunise. We are so thrilled to have Bianca with us virtually as a special guest for Cartoon Crossroads Columbus 2021. You're currently watching a pre-recorded event which will be broadcast and followed by a live Q&A. Bianca Xunise is a cartoonist based out of Chicago, Illinois, and a self-described goth of color. Her work primarily focuses on the plight, joy, and daily struggles of young Black outcasts. In 2017, Xunise earned an Ignatz for promising new talent at the Small Press Expo for her comic Say Her Name, an autobiographical story of police brutality and social justice. Xunise has collaborated with Vogue, The Washington Post, The Nib, and Believer magazine. In 2020, Bianca made history when she became the second nationally syndicated Black femme cartoonist and joined the comic strip Chix as their first Black creator in their 20-year run. Her contributions to Chix run every Tuesday and have sparked viral sensations all over the world. Thank you so much for being with us, Bianca. We are so excited to hear from you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I'm a little worried because my cat's a little feisty. She's a biter. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna be like, they don't bite. No, she bites. And so I'm scared that she's gonna keep me in line today. But let's just go ahead. You're here now. Let's just dive right in. Get into some comics. We're here for comics. So let me read you all some of my favorites. And if you heard these ones before, let's hear them again. So I'm going to just go ahead and jump into my presentation, which I hope that everyone can see. I will take a nod from someone as a yes, and awesome. Okay, so here we go. So as stated before, I'm Bianca Xunise, friendly neighborhood goth I have here. Friendly, as I age, the friendliness is becoming less and less, but I'm starting to become an old witch, which I'm excited for. It was just my birthday, and so feeling spicy. So again, a little bit about me. I'm Bianca Xunise. I'm a cartoonist and comics professor based out of Chicago, Illinois. Sometimes I teach at DePaul University. Sometimes I float around, do little things like this. Adventures in Babysitting was one of my favorite films. An 80s baby. Here they are climbing the Cranes building, which I actually worked as a junior art director at. My work primarily focuses on the plight and daily struggles of being a young Black weirdo in America. But I also talk about mental health awareness, sad boys, music. I'm really into music. I'm even wearing a band pen right now of the Adverts, punk band from the 1970s. And I also talk about police brutality, which garnered me an Ignatz in 2017. And this is also the comic that won that Ignatz, and a lot of people are very curious. Here's a little sneak peek of it. I talk about my experience with police brutality, which happened around the same time that my father faced some police brutality as well. And you can grab that comic if you're interested in hearing it. on my Gumroad. You can go and see that, download it, give it a read. There's also a bunch of other comics in that sort of book. It's called Say Her Name. You can go check it out at gumroad.com/Bianca Xunise. Gotta get them plugs in there. And here's some of my six Chix work. So I have a comic here to the left that I think we're all kind of in this phase of, we're wearing masks, not sure when the mask situation is going to come to a close. So masks has become a part of our daily lexicon. And as a goth, sometimes I wonder if people know I'm spooky enough. With my mask on, you can't see my black lipstick. How would they know? How would they ever know? And here's another comic of me here and my partner, and I'm asking them, are you sure it's a good idea for us to conjure a ghost from the past? Because you never know. They might not be a fan of black people. Okay, so we have another comic here that is the one that was the comic to have ever comicked, and a lot of people had a lot of different things to say about me for drawing this. And it's a woman, just any old woman. She could be a kindergarten teacher. She could be your mom. And she says, if you can't breathe, then take that silly mask off, because she sees my shirt and she sees that I can't breathe. And she's like, just free yourself, free your mind, and the rest will follow. And so there was a little, I was in the news about it, NBC, Yahoo, all types of stuff. Got so many friendly letters from folks over this comic. I'll let everyone sort of put together the subtle nuances there. I won't explain it. I don't want to take the fun away, give away the answers. It's like, when you hear your favorite song and you're like, oh my gosh, this song is exactly about the experience I had in high school. The musician's not going to tell you that. They have no idea who you are. So it's been in museums here. Here it is over in, it wasn't Dublin. I'm forgetting my major cities in Ireland right now. But here it is in a museum in Ireland, which I'm very excited about. But it's also still hanging up. Probably by the time you guys won't have much time to see it, because the show closes on the 3rd of October, unfortunately. If you want to see it at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, it's even bigger there. Here it's kind of tiny, but it's pretty much the whole size of this if you want to go check it out in Chicago if you have time. Plus, I can't urge enough to go check out that show. There's so many amazing artists from, I close the show as contemporary art, but it goes all the way back to 1960s. It's amazing. And here's also some more of my work. I like to do illustrations as well as comics, but a lot of my illustrations are also very text heavy, sort of tell a story within the illustration, can feel sometimes a little literal than some more abstract work. Okay, so enough of all that, enough of the spiel about my life, blah, blah, blah. Let's get into some comics. Let's read a little bit. Let's hear some stories. So I want to read a couple of short tales to everyone today, and I'm going to start with one of my favorites, which is also at the museum. You can see the process work of these if you check these out. These are the final ones, so I'm going to get into it. So, growing up, I learned to never show my rage. The idea of my own anger hung heavy on me like a shackle of restraint. At home, I was punished if I took a tone with my own mother. I would later be diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety, but in my youth, they were perceived as teenage angst. In school, I got the detention for having an attitude under the misunderstanding a lecture. As I got older and spoke up for myself in school and in jobs, I got suspended and even fired. I was haunted by the concept of having an attitude for many years. I would constantly swallow my justified rage to allow others to feel more comfortable around me. And truth be told, I still struggle with this. Sometimes I believed their accusations because I heard them so often. I learned the same thing was happening to many Black women and Black people, marginalized genders of all types. She has an attitude has been used as a dog whistle in silencing Black women and femmes' rights to feel frustrated. It can instantly create a racist stereotype of the angry Black woman. She has an attitude. Black women's emotions are weaponized against us. We are compared to pit bulls while our white counterparts are seen as brave in the same situations. I was raised to believe that showing my anger would be perceived as a weakness, but instead of rising above it, I would suppress it until it would come exploding out. Ultimately, I found positive outlets for releasing my anger that weren't self-destructive, such as kickboxing, therapy, and getting lost in a punk mosh pit is cathartic too. Above all else, I've learned to allow myself to be frustrated in the moment. I have to prioritize my self-agency in a society that would rather see me as docile. Standing in my truth has made me a lot less angry. So that is my story about anger and emotions, controlling your emotions, feeling your emotions, and just being free with them. I will say that even though today I definitely identify as non-binary, some of my comics I may refer to myself as a Black woman. I am not offended by myself identifying as a Black woman during the time when I wrote that, because when I wrote that, I identified as a Black woman. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, they misgendered themselves. I don't care. I go by she, her pronouns. I am okay with being perceived to the outside world as a Black woman. My gender for me is a personal thing, and it's not necessarily something that I feel very urgent to make sure that everybody gets correctly. I love Black women. I am socialized as one. I was raised by one, a single Black woman. I am proud to be grouped together with Black women. So do not worry if I say Black woman in these comments, because I don't want to keep editing myself as I read these. Okay, so here's another story from high school. So let's go back in time. We're going back in time here to 2004. So almost 20 years ago. Let's not talk about that. I once had a pink wig, and I truly believed it was the coolest thing in the world. I remember buying it from the novelty Halloween clearance at my local craft store, which, like, I'm low-key, like, really excited that it's almost time for post-Halloween where everything's on sale. As someone who wasn't allowed to celebrate Halloween as a child, this purchase was extra delicious because I knew it was intended for a costume, which is also one thing my mom comments about me right now is, like, I can see probably one of the reasons why you're so goth today is because you weren't allowed to celebrate Halloween as a child. And that, I think that's true. I don't remember if the wig looked foolish on me. All I remember is that it made me feel invincible. It was like a rite of passage. Wearing it made me finally feel as righteous as the kids I admired in the 80s movies I would binge watch alone in my room on Friday nights, because I was definitely coolest kid in school that got invited to a lot of parties and was never a nerd. When I finally had the confidence to wear it to school, I tried to recreate the perfect 1977 punk look. Fishnets, boots, the works. My mom, a bona fide weird kid herself, even helped me cover my thrifted army jacket with safety pins and band patches. So here I am feeling just the coolest thing. I wanted to look like Susie Sue, and my mom, who, I will talk about another comic about our relationship coming up next. She, was like, be yourself. I'll help this, within reason. I left the house feeling like I was on top of the world. Not everyone saw it that way. At school, I was roasted. It's not like I wasn't used to being bullied. I was the district weird kid, truth moment. I'd anticipate the reaction, but it wasn't until I got to my science class that I started to reconsider my aesthetic choice. Look at this weirdo, ha ha ha. Oh, so you think you Little Kim now? Because Little Kim, we didn't have Doja Cat, we didn't have Saweetie, we didn't even have Nicki Minaj when I was in high school. The only Black woman that would have color hair was Little Kim. That's it. So I got called Little Kim a lot in school, which was, again, that was a compliment. Who are you supposed to be? Halloween is over. I'm punk. Oh, that's why people shit. Those words crushed me. I felt so humiliated, embarrassed, and I could even feel my face get hot as the classroom burst into a roar of laughter. Was I denying my blackness by trying to be punk? Were there no black women like me in punk music? As a teen, I grew up in an era pre-Google. I didn't know about polystyrene, and my access was very limited to the local scene and whatever records I found at the thrift store. Bands like the Ramones looked nothing like me. I never wore the wig to school again. Now that I've grown up, I realize the younger me was wrong. I can be black and punk. I can be black and nearly anything. The music I choose to listen to does not give me white privilege, nor does it prevent the daily microaggressions I face as a black person in Western society. All it does is make some people see me as weird, or perhaps cool, amongst the tribe of black and brown weirdos I've come to know post-high school. Recently, I was asked if I was alternative because I grew up in an all-white neighborhood. It's a common misconception that in order to be an alternative person of color, you need to grow up around all white people or have internalized self-hate. I don't subscribe to either of those beliefs because I know black people invented rock and roll. The truth is, I've just learned to live my life unapologetically, even if that means parading around in a pink wig or singing the words to my favorite punk rock songs at the top of my lungs. So here I am singing ESG, which was one of the first black female sort of punk bands. One of like the first like hard rock and roll. Like if you like dance punk, if you like to dance to like the Clash and things like that, ESG was doing that back with Grandmaster Flash in like the early 70s. So check them out. Here it is. This one's a little sad. Let's just take a moment. Let's change the attitude. Remove the punk. Now we're just sad. Put on your Smith record now. I once had a dream that I left my body, and it became the most beautiful skeleton. I had no worries, no fears, no dead weight. I was free to do whatever, be whatever, free to just exist. Like all dreams, it came to an end, and I had to return to my body, full of anxieties, irrational fears, mania-filled spiraling, and the crushing weights of depression. I'm still learning to love the chaos that exists within my body. But some days, I wish I could be free. This comic definitely has some gender ideas to it, but also just like depression, anxiety, kind of existing, as you see in my work, existing as a black person in America or just on this planet. You're constantly questioned, your existence all day. And sometimes I would like to just turn it off and just live. This is a comic that I did for the Sweaty Palms Anthology issue 2. I definitely recommend checking that out if you're into or relate to issues of depression, anxiety, all types of mental illnesses. Check that book out. There's 2 of them. They're like thick. I love them. Yeah, I'd also want to mention that the first comic I read was a story that I did for The Lily, which is a women's magazine that's a part of Washington Post. Check those out. If you're interested in comics, we do a lot of political work. And the second comic was one I did for The Nib. Really great friends of mine. They always champion me to be able to tell offbeat stories like having a pink wig and being punk, and I really appreciate them for that. Please check out The Nib. They are community supported, so they definitely need you to check you guys out. Now I'm going to get to my last comic. I know. So let's go ahead and check this one out. This one's a little bit fun. This one is based off of, I wish I had one offhand. I definitely do. Wait, hold on. Let me just wheel over here. Hope I don't run over my cat. This one's based off of my favorite thing in the world, Chick tracts. As mentioned before, my mom would support me sometimes when it came to my punkness, my weirdness. But she also got caught up in the wave of late 90s or late 80s, early 90s evangelism, just the wave of evangelism that came across, with Reagan and George Bush, and everybody was Christian, and it was an interesting time in America. A satanic panic, I lived it. And so me and my brothers, I have two older brothers, we would hunt for these everywhere. You can find them on the CTA, you can find them in a gutter, pretty much where people throw garbage, you can find a Chick track. And so my theory is I never buy them, I can only find them. And my brothers mail them to me now. So let's get into it. It would be an understatement to say that I grew up in a strict Christian upbringing. Oh, actually, I do want to say I was an altar boy as well, because I had older brothers, and they were like, we need you to be in something, so just go be an altar boy. And I see Caitlin nodding and see that this is the first time I've met another non-cis boy being an altar boy, so this is exciting for me to talk about this post-meeting. This is exciting. Okay, when I say I was Christian, I mean Bible Belt, hallelujah. After school, we go to church 8 days a week. Jesus is the reason for the season. I actually married Jesus in a purity ball, and my mom still thinks I'm a virgin kind of Christian. True story, my mom learned that I was no longer a virgin from reading this comic. You're still saving yourself, baby? Yep. But most importantly, the type of Christian I grew up meant no secular music. Here's a Bone Thugs and Harmony tape that was not allowed in my house. I dang near missed the Spice Girl craze if people didn't constantly yell, "Hey, Scary Spice," at me in the playground. You see, after my parents divorced, my mom found a new man in her life, and his name was Jesus Christ. And I like to point out that it was also white Jesus. That's an important distinction. This is not to say my parents weren't once cool. Back in the day, they were just a pair of fashion-forward club kids going to Neo Excalibur with a gaggle of goths, punks, and queer friends, but divorce changes people. Divorce comes like a wave that reminds you that your happily ever after you thought your life was going to be is no longer. Now you're middle-aged, have to start all over again, alone, with 3 young children. And because Jesus said so, my mom threw away her entire record collection, including original presses of Kiss, The Clash, and Michael Jackson. She saved like 3. And they're beautiful. She keeps them like tucked behind like the altar in her house. I missed almost every craze growing up, from Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. I don't have deep cognitive feelings for late 90s, early aughts bands, because at home I was only allowed to listen to 2 things: oldies and Jesus music. So here's my friends crushing over the different boys. I love Justin. I love Brian. Bianca, who do you like? I like Kyle. Yeah. Kyle. This is also like ways that my friends would out myself that I was also not really super interested in boys either. So my pop stars were James Brown, David Bowie, Stevie Wonder, and so on. In fact, for my 11th birthday, I had a Motown-themed party that only 2 of my friends showed up at, because, again, super cool. Because, again, the coolest nerd in town. And my best friend still reminds me to this day that she won the lip sync challenge to Mary Wells' My Guy. Which, again, this is another moment when I was drawing this. I was like, what straight child has a lip sync party for their 11th birthday? That's not fun. You want to go to Fun Zone. You want to do go-karts. You don't want to dress up as dead pop stars. This also means that I have a repertoire of 70s music stuck in my head forever. I have yet to meet someone who can out-sing Steely Dan, Elton John, Wings, and Supertramp under the age of 35. I'm getting closer to that age. I have to change this comic soon. Even now, my mom jokes that I have grandpa taste in music, but that's fine by me. So here I am holding my cat, who's under my desk right now, saying, "Take a look at my girlfriend. She's the Only One I Got, which was later sampled by Gym Class Heroes, but it's an original song by Supertramp, just if you ever want to check that out. My brother rebelled the best he could, and he would teach me all the music he was into, but we have almost a 10-year difference, and going around the playground singing Zombie by the Cranberries doesn't make you cool, it just makes you weird. Zombie, 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 stop being weird, Bianca. For some reason, my mom got in her head that if the music came before her generation, became from her generation or before, it was cool with her and it was cool with Jesus, versus the evil devil music my generation made. I can't say I was too upset about this, because eventually, by my teens, I got clever and realized this also included punk and goth music. Here I am at the thrift store with my mom, asking her if I can get this Adamant record, and she's like, I don't see why not. She also had a crush on Adamant, so that was easy. But I will say, side note, I will say my mom was heavily against R. Kelly in the 90s, and now I can't help but just thank her for keeping that out of the house. She also was super against Harry Potter, which I also lucked out on that one as well. See, sometimes moms are right. Sometimes when your mom says something's the devil, it is. So, hey, thanks, Mom. And because my mom was a Cyndi Lauper type punk girl herself, sharing this music between us became sacred. All I really needed to do was butter up with a glass of Jesus juice. And soon she'd be singing Thompson Twins going, y'all don't know nothing about this shit right here. Which is, you know, the famous black saying. I may no longer be the Bible thumper I was before, but it kept me out of trouble for the most part. Plus, some of my greatest memories are just the hours I would spend listening to throwback radio stations, praying that they would play the extended version of Tainted Love so I could put it on my mixtape. So, in the past, kids, we used to have these things called tapes, and you put them in this giant contraption called a boom box, and you would be able to steal the music from the radio by recording it on the tape. And so sometimes you could use other tapes that were pre-recorded and stick a little piece of paper. There was like a hole and you could record over things, and me and my brothers would record over all her gospel tapes and her like ministry tapes that she would forget about. It was a terrible thing to do. But then they were easier to hide if they said like a minister's name on it, until she was like, oh, I really want to listen to this sermon again. And then it was like, you know, something we weren't supposed to be listening to. So anyway, play the darn song. Up next, we have our minds set on George Harrison. As a kid, I so badly wanted to be like everyone else. I wanted to be a part of the fads and understand what everyone was talking about. Maybe then I'd feel like I'd belong. Nowadays, I don't really give a flip. My upbringing cultivated the person I am today, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. His little baby Bianca asking, well, will I ever fit in? Because that's what I sounded like as a child. And today I'm like, nah. And it's going to be great. And I still don't fit in. I'm still not cool. And I love being not cool. It's awesome. And that's the end of my comics readings. Thank you for enduring that. I'm going to actually have a cuter way to wrap this up. I just wanted to let you know this is the last slide of this. So I'm going to we could actually just kill the screen share altogether as we get to the end of this episode. I feel like like reading Rainbow when it's like the end of the episode, and now I have to leave you with something beautiful and important. So believe in yourself, but also thank you all for joining me as I probably power read through a lot of those comics. Feel free to rewatch this if you want to sit with them a little bit longer. Again, I have everything on my Gumroad, and very soon I'm going to have I have like boxes behind me of printed comics. I haven't been able to work with my printers because of coronavirus, but I have been able to print a lot of things. So there's going to be some printed things too if you're more into like owning zines. Having that is fun, but I just want to thank everyone for having me here. I want to thank Caitlin for inviting me to do this, to be a special guest. This is the fact that you all here champion my work and read comics from someone who once believed that no one would ever care about my voice and no one would ever care about the things that I have to say, the things that I experienced in my life as just some Black kid from the South Side of Chicago who, was told my life expectancy would be my 20s and I wouldn't matter to this world. I really appreciate you all having patience with me and just enjoying these comics and just continue to do comics. If you're interested in comics, make them. There is no age limit to making comics. Get started today. Just grab a piece of paper and a pen and you're ready to go. One thing I always like to tell my students is you never need to charge your sketchbook. And so you can draw whenever you want, wherever you want. Nothing can stop you. So use your voice. Everyone has one. And you can use it to, I hope these comics inspired you to maybe write some personal stories or write political stories, whatever you feel like it. But thank you all for having me here. And yeah, that's it.
Bianca, from one former altar server and also a person who has never read a single Harry Potter book or seen a single Harry Potter movie, I want to say thank you so much. That was phenomenal. I really, really enjoyed that. And now for everyone out there in the audience, if you're watching this via Zoom, you can start putting your questions into the Q&A function and we'll get started here in a bit. Hi, everyone. I feel like I just time traveled a week into the future from when we recorded that to now to do this Q&A with Bianca, who I believe has just joined us. Bianca, I will invite you to turn your video on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I'm not getting the invitation.
Let me see here. And if you are listening, could you turn Bianca's video on? Okay, you should be able to turn it on now.
Oh.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
How are you? You look great.
Thought this would be nice and festive for the spooky season.
It is. It's the spooky season. It's your time.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us. And thanks everyone who's watching out there. I know we've got some people watching on Zoom. We've got people on Discord and elsewhere. If you want to put your questions into the Q&A function, if you're watching via Zoom, or put them in the chat on whatever other feature you're watching through, we will get them relayed to Bianca. So in the meantime, I figured I would start by asking you a couple of questions of my own.
Sure. So
you have like the very unique experience of being a person who has recently started creating a newspaper comic, which I feel like is like, not exactly common anymore these days.
Not really.
So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Chix and what that's been like in general for you. Sure.
So I started doing Chix. So my partner just saw my face. I thought this would be fun. Okay, so
I think it's hilarious.
I got asked by T. Forner, who is one of the editors at Chix. They had asked me to do a comic for them for Popeye's, I want to say 90th anniversary. I want to say it was the 90th. It was up there. It was like really high. My brain keeps saying 75, but I'm pretty sure it was older than that. I mean, like, goodness. I know 125 is way too old, but it was up there. Anyway, so they asked me to do this Popeye's comic. They asked a lot of cartoonists to do it. And I wanted to do like something a little more interesting. Like my mom always calls me Olive Oil because I'm like scatterbrained and like, Popeye at all times. That's kind of like my little Bianca character is like her hair's on fire all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I did a comic starring Olive Oil And I wanted to like kind of just like play with just like some of Popeye's themes. Like I also really love Wimpy. He's like one of my favorite characters. You know, I'll gladly pay you on Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Same.
And I did this like Great British Bake Off, but instead it was called like the Great Spinach Bake Off, and Olive Oil makes this cake that like everybody loves using spinach, right? Because it's Popeye.
Yeah.
And Popeye's not even in the comic. We don't need him. It's like Olive Oil and Wimpy and like I threw like a goth Popeye character in there.
All right.
And that went really well. And after that experience, you know, kind of, you know, the syndicate industry is it's an old industry, but at the same time, it's an industry that people sort of get grandfathered into it. A lot of people start a series around my age and will do it until they are no longer on this mortal plane. And so one of the Chix on Six Chix was ready to walk away from the series. And T was like, you know what, I feel like you'd be a great fit for this. And that's kind of how it happened. It was very organic. It wasn't like I didn't have to do any like sort of art test. I was actually working on my own series for King Comics, like direct rival. I feel like there's only
really?
left. I was developing a series with Sheena Wolf for like 3 years. And couldn't nail it. I'm not good at everything. I'll admit that. I'll be the first to admit that. And I was having a really hard time with the format, and I was like really beating myself up. And I was like, gosh, like I suck, and maybe I should just quit comics altogether. And
was that going to be like a daily comic or something?
It was going to be it was going to be a daily.
I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot to even do once a week.
Concepts. I feel like, you know, doing like a goth sort of spooky, it was definitely going to be like a spooky comic series. Maybe that was just too different for the newspaper circuit, but I get to slip it in now with like the Six Chix comic. It worked out. It kind of all happened at the same time. And it's great. And so I'm pretty happy with the situation. I still would love to maybe do my own strip someday, but right now my plate is full. I'm not even sure if folks can see all of my drawings behind me. These are like thumbnails before they even become thumbnails. It's like me like work storyboarding behind me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I'm curious about your process for Six Chix in particular. So your strips run every Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how far out do you work? I'm like curious about what that world looks like nowadays.
It's not too bad. It's about 6 weeks ahead of time. That's not really like, and it's only one comic. Like I'm only turning in one single panel comic a week. A lot of times I'll do them in batches and kind of send them all at once, because that helps. Because trying to be funny once a week, it's kind of difficult. It's kind of difficult to think of something, think of a punchline, and build this one panel comic around it. Every week you kind of have to do it. I find it best to kind of take a couple of days and even like a week and just like sit there and just draw different concepts. And I feel like the more that I do them, the more they become funnier. Like I become more relaxed. It becomes there's less pressure of like having to perform. It's just more like, oh yeah, and then there's this, and then there's this, and you really start to use that creative energy. You really start to use your creative mind. It definitely works to do that. And I also kind of like to play off of themes. Like right now, most of my comics are going to be like about Halloween, because I get a whole month to do like spooky comics. So everything that's coming out this month is going to be Halloween related. I got some spicy ones coming out that I'm pretty excited about, because I love to be spicy. But yeah, and then I also do a Sunday. We share Sundays. Okay. So I feel like it's every 6 weeks. I was looking at my calendar, I'm trying to think. Every 6 weeks, I do a different. I do a Sunday, and we split them. Okay. That one is pretty far out. That one is like, I don't know. If I'm doing I had a Sunday due in September, and it wasn't to be posted in November, if that makes sense. So
okay, yeah, which has to be a little weird, right? Because you can't be like super topical, like in the moment, like super responsive to things that are happening if you have to work that far out.
Well, honestly, I thought that at first when I was first doing this, and it turns out that the news doesn't really move that quickly, and the problems that we face as human beings have been the same for the past 300 years. So you can kind of touch on these topics of sexism, racism, homophobia.
They never go away.
Those are just part of the American quilt.
Yeah, it's evergreen material.
I can always talk about them. But so it's sort of like the comic that I talked about in the presentation that had this big moment. I mean, I drew that. I was a little nervous, like, gosh, am I gonna miss the pandemic window? Well, here we are. Whole smooth year later, and we're still in the pandemic. So
there you go. Still in it.
Yeah.
Still current. So I'm curious about what your first experiences were with comics. I mean, you talked a lot about some of your like pop cultural influences and music influences and stuff, but what comics were you reading? If you were reading comics as a teen or as a young adult, and who some of your inspirations are?
I've always read comics. I'm the youngest of two older brothers, so they definitely passed comics on to me. I started reading like Cape comics like X-Men, Batman. I think in high school I was reading like V for Vendetta and things like that. Like Sandman, like I think the girl that I had a crush on in high school was like, she like literally gave me like a Sandman and a Chibamato CD together, and that like formed my personality forever. So I love comics. I always love comics. And one thing that I've been thinking about actually quite often is me and my brothers used to make comics together. We used to make jam comics. And so, I mean, because I grew up pretty poor, you know, I grew up in like the late 80s, early 90s, you know, we didn't have tablets, we didn't have things to constantly feed us things and entertain us. We had to entertain ourselves. And so my mom, like, if we couldn't buy the toy at the thrift store, we weren't going to have it. And so my mom worked at the bank at the time. She could just take paper home, and we would draw on dot matrix paper, which is the paper that had the little dots on the side that you could tear off for people who are like unfamiliar. And we would make little jam comics. And a lot of times they were about like Kirby and Spot, Cool Spot from the 7-Up mascot.
Really?
Yeah, we would like all our like favorite, like we would throw like our imaginary friends in there, like all the things that we were really into. Like I was just talking to my friend the other day about how me and my brother were really obsessed with like the dinosaur from Jurassic Park that had like the things on the side of his face and it would spit out tar.
Oh yeah.
So we would draw comics about him. Like it was just whatever we were super into, we would draw comics about. And like we still, like even when my brothers come over, we'll still like draw together. But they went into other art fields. My middle brother, he went into video games, and my oldest brother went into product design. I'm the only one who kind of kept doing this because I was really influenced by this, and it gives me the dopamine that I need when I work on it. It's nostalgic for me. It feels important to do it, and yeah, I mean, like even reading comics myself, and then like my brothers gave me a lot of things, but like reading manga was definitely like, especially like shoujo, I was like, oh wow, like female characters and like girl stories, than just like, even though like I love Rogue and like Storm, like to have like just slice of life. It was like my first introduction to slice of life was through manga. And then I started to get into like 8-Ball and Optic Nerve and things like that, where it was American slice of life comics. And I loved Optic Nerve. Optic Nerve was at the comic book store in the Midwest. They would have them all the way in the back of the comic store, like stuffed behind other comics. And I literally would like drive across Chicagoland to try to find each issue individually versus buying like the trades. And that's like one of my happiest things I own. Like I even have like a signed first issue that I bought at a garage sale.
That's awesome. I love that.
So yeah, that was my jam. Optic Nerve is probably one of my biggest influence on my work.
Oh yeah. And I'm just curious, this is kind of a broad question. Answer it however you want, but it's one that we like to ask at CXE in general, because we're celebrating like all things comics this week. Why comics? Like, what is it about comics that you're particularly drawn to and that you feel like is best suited for telling this kind of stories that you want to tell?
That's a great question. It's something that I've been exploring in my own personal journey. Like, why do I do this? And I drew comics again since childhood, and I kept diaries, illustrated diaries. There was this children's book called Amelia that was put out by the people who made American Girl dolls, Pleasant Company, and it was like a composition book. And it was like this 9-year-old girl who would write like her diary in this composition book. It was an actual book. But seeing that and seeing like these illustrated comics, I was like, oh, I want to make those. So at 9 years old till today, I was like having diaries and like putting in my thoughts. And I honestly, being the youngest child, and some of like the less savory things that I've experienced in my life, some of the more traumatic experiences, I think it was important for me to record it. It was important to me to have proof of these things that I was experiencing, because when you grow up in like an environment with like a single mom who's like working all the time, and you have 2 older brothers, and we have quite a bit of an age gap between me and my brothers, I kind of felt like I didn't have a voice. And for the longest time, even as a child, I didn't speak. I was like too nervous to talk. It like hurt to talk. I had a stutter, and it was a way for me to just kind of like validate myself and be like, you're here, your voice matters. The things that happen to you, even if it was just like some kid getting like being bullied, being able to write that down and being like, I had a really bad day today, and my bully's name was Jeanette. Jeanette bullied me today, and da 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 da. It was just nice to have that moment for myself. Yeah. And it wasn't until I met Jeremy Tender that I decided to put my work out there and put these diary comics out there. And that's definitely one of the reasons why my comics definitely have deeply personal themes to it, because that's kind of what I always worked in, these deeply personal themes. As I age, I definitely have realized that sometimes I want to take a little bit of a step back and not be so raw and not give so much of myself to the internet, to either completely remove me from the story at all altogether and insert themselves, and then kind of be like, this reminds me of the time that I da 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 da. And I'm like, that's great. I'm glad that my work inspires you and helps you unpack some of your things, but also this is not just sound like vain, but like this is also a story about a very specific incident that happened to myself. And this isn't about you. I'm great. This is great that you relate to it, but this isn't about you. And I've noticed that a lot with social media and the way that social media has made this big major turn with 2020. I definitely feel like there's a bit of a disconnect between the way people respond to my work recently versus the way people respond to my work when I was either just hosting it up on blogs myself, or people were following my social media specifically for my comics and not just for content. There's definitely been a push for people they're just following a lot of people for content to scroll and fill their day, and they're like, I like this, I like this, I like this, but they're not really having the literacy to kind of like go through the work and really understand the story they're in, and then putting it away. And then like, this is just a story I read, now I can put it aside. This isn't something I need to go unpack about my life. And so there's definitely that, like there's this push-pull, and I kind of feel like I've lost point here. My cat's biting me. But I forgot your original question now. I've gotten to this.
Oh, I mean, that was great. It was broad. It was why comics in general.
Comics, right. So it's just like, that's definitely why I do this. And it's definitely why I'm excited to be doing a longer form story, because with punk rock karaoke, the story I'm doing, the graphic novel I'm doing with Penguin, I get to take those same themes and those same experiences that I had growing up as a teenager and put it into this fictionalized story that it will be universal, where everybody can dip themselves into the story. And it's not necessarily me directly where I feel, okay, but this is also like something that happened directly to me. It's a little bit more broad, and I'm excited to tell these stories. And I'm excited to blend those in and kind of take a little bit of a backseat. I really needed that validation in my 20s. I really needed to be seen and to exist. And if you read my work, you would know like a lot of the traumatic things I've experienced and kind of need that validation. And now I'm kind of like, I'm excited to take the director's seat and kind of be like, bye, and fade in the background and build these characters that are going to have these experiences, but it's not necessarily going to be me specifically. And when I get older, I definitely want to drop like some like dark, heavy book
Sure.
that's like autobiographical when I'm like 50, and they allow me to do that, and they, as in the publishers, and I could just write an adult graphic novel that has adult themes in it. That's not for children. It's for grown-ups, and I can talk about things I want to talk about, and it'll be personal. But
Yeah.
I just feel like I need more time in doing this, and you know, the quick turnaround of doing stories for like Washington Post and the Nib, and gosh, let's just say Rolling Stone. I don't think I've worked for the Vogue and Shondaland and all the other outlets I've had.
Yeah.
One thing I tell my students is give yourself a beat. When you have a personal story that you want to write, give yourself a minute. Because sometimes I would write things and I would put it out there and I'd be so mad, and then I'd be like, I'm not that mad anymore. Or I'd be like, I'm over it. Oops. And now everybody thinks this hot take is something that I firmly stand in. I was just mad that day when I wrote it.
Yeah. And then it like instantly belongs to the world as soon as it's out there, and you've been really vulnerable. And yeah, there's got to be, I'm sure it's also really overwhelming to deal with all the feedback, especially as you touched on in your presentation, you had a very viral comic last year. So I'm sure that also kind of shifted.
Instant feedback is brand new. I'm excited to just exist in the library set and have people read my work in the library and not comments.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the upcoming book? So did you say it's for young adults, and you know, when can we expect it? What's it about?
It's a young adult graphic novel, but I definitely feel like all ages can read this. Even like younger, like, I mean, when I was 8, I was probably reading things I probably shouldn't have. And it's for, I want everybody to be able to pick this up and be like, this is Bianca Xunise. You know, they got the book and they're like, yeah, it doesn't come out until spring of 2023, which feels like a long time, but for me feels like tomorrow. And so I'm working on that. It's a story about a non-binary femme named Ariel and her 2 friends, Gael and Michelle, and they have a band together. And it kind of just follows the ends, more than it being about them being a band, because I didn't want to do a story, because I felt like it's been done so many times about like, let's start a band. I felt like that's been done. They've been in a band, that's established.
Okay.
It's about the part where the band starts to fall apart, and they are all graduating high school, and they're post high school. It's that summer between high school and maybe college. And it talks about that path, that transitional summer between the remnants of your childhood into adulthood, and the things that you face. And each of them have different paths that they take. It takes place on the South Side where I grew up, because I wanted to create this love letter to the parts of Chicago that people consider undesirable and people consider trash. You know, I wanted to write something that said, I'm proud of where I came from. I'm proud of where I grew up, and it made me who I am. And, you know, if some of them go to college, some of them don't. I wanted to like have that reality that like kids these days may not have the same push to go to college in the same way that our generation did. And so, the money may not be there, or we're in a pandemic. Some kids are like, what's the point of me dropping 50 grand to do Zoom college? So I get that. I wanted to do something true to the kids today, but I also wanted to just do a little story about Ariel's basically me. And it's just like what little Bianca's high school experience was like. And, you know, there's themes of poverty, there's themes of race, and they're all queer. All of them are. It's never a plot point. It's never like a coming out story. It's just established, and they're confident in it. And I love that as well. And there's a big story that I don't want to give away, that I wanted to write something for a younger version of myself, or kids who are like me, who are tender, they're sensitive, and they're artists, and people try to take advantage of that sensitivity, try to take advantage of that little light that little artists have inside them, and to watch out for those types of people. And it's basically that. It's basically like, watch out for these people.
I love that. This sounds amazing. And when it comes out, we're going to have you out as a CXE guest again, but in person, so we can actually all be together.
Man, I hope so.
Have you at the Billie Ireland.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I know we have to wrap up because the next program starts in 5 minutes, and people can watch along again on Zoom, Discord, etc. But if folks wanted to go online right now and buy some work from you, Bianca, where could they find your stuff?
All you can, if you go to my Twitter or my Instagram, if you click the link in the bio, it'll give you everything you want. My website, my zines, my social medias, all the things that you want. But Gumroad /Bianca Xunise, all my comics are on there. And I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can find me on all those things. Come say hey. Patreon if you want. I'm doing Patreon more if you want more of that real comics, gritty comics experience of like personal stories and stuff that folks may miss from me. Come to Patreon. Come check out.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Bianca. And for those watching at home at 5 p.m., you can tune in to see Spotlight on Jamila Rouser and Robin Smith from Black Josiah Press. And then at 6 p.m., what I think is the best moment of the CXC weekend, which is the announcement of the Emerging Talent Award. So tune in for those and join me in virtually thanking Bianca. Clap, 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 clap. Everyone. Thanks, Bianca.
Thank you so much.
See you soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.